Welcome everyone to the 2018 Preschool Mindfulness Summit. I'm very excited to welcome our next guest, Nancy Colier. She is a sought-after speaker and an author of the book, The Power of Off, The Mindful Way to Stay Sane in a Virtual World, which is really changing the way people think about technology and their relationships. She's a blogger with the Huffington Post and Psychology Today, and she's a psychotherapist with a private practice in New York. So thank you very much for joining us, Nancy, and welcome.
Glad to be here.
Great. So this topic, as we just talked about a few minutes ago, is so exciting and so needed because I think everybody can really see technology is everywhere now. So what do you think technology is doing to our experience of life?
That's such a big question, right? Let's start with the big ones. Well, it's changing fundamentally our experience of life. And, there's a reason that the anxiety rates and the depression rates and, all sorts of other rates are spiking, particularly in our children. And there is an addictive quality we can get into about technology, which is turning much of our experience into the one of an addict, and how the world gets smaller and less satisfying. But on a more specific level, one of the things that it's doing to our experience of life is that it's turning life into an opportunity to promote our brand. So if I'm, last weekend I was at the museum with my daughter, who's a teenager, and we're looking at the art, but she's taking pictures of herself looking at the art. So we're not so much in our experience, but we're thinking, how can I use this experience as a way to promote my brand, as a way to say who I am, right? I'm a person that goes to concerts. I'm a person that goes to the museum, but we're not directly experiencing that experience. Another example of that might be how we're constantly videoing our life, right? So, we go to our kids' dance performance, let's say, and we spend the whole time we're there taking pictures of that, or taking pictures of the party we're at, posting the pictures. And then we can later say, look at this life I'm living. Look at all these things that I did, and, how super hip I am. The trade-off, though, is that we were in that concert. We were in that dance performance while it was happening. So as with a therapy practice and a mindfulness practice and all these different things, I'm meeting all these people who feel a bit like ghosts in their own lives. Their lives are happening and they can show you their life on their phone, but they don't have the cellular sense of having been there. And as one other example, if we are, we all walk around with a kind of narrator in our head, who's sort of like the person walking 15 feet behind us. So look at what's happening to me. Oh, this is going well, right? Oh, they like me. Oh, look at this. Sort of as we're living it, we're also hearing the play-by-play, right? And so what technology in part does is it provides a constant audience for that inner narrator. So now we don't just think it, we don't just have that thought, but we have somewhere in an audience to share it with. And then we get commentary back on, oh, look, not just what do I think about me, but what do you think about what I'm thinking about me? Right. So we're 2 steps away from direct experience of life. So it's we can talk about sort of how it's making us more depressed or feel less satisfied or feel like life is not enough. And that's all. I want to get into that part, our sense that life is not enough. But at a very, very fundamental level, our relationship with life is as an object that we use to serve our identity's purpose.
Right, yeah. I know it's a huge effect, and you can just really see it everywhere you go. So how is this affecting our well-being in general?
Yeah, so not that well. I mean, well, we're starting out on the sort of, more difficult aspects of technology. And of course, part of what makes technology tricky is that it does offer so many wonderful things, and it's really about how do we, as the human being in charge of that technology, want to include it in our lives, right? That's the thing. Right now, it's kind of our inner reptile that's got the reins. It's this pleasure seeking, so on, so on. It's like when we go to an all-inclusive resort, let's say, and it's the part of us that has the mudslide at 9 a.m. In the hands of our pleasure-seeking more infantile parts. So what it's doing to our well-being is it's making us, for one thing, a nervous wreck. Because, this having to be available 24/7 and feeling like I have to. I had a woman in my office yesterday who has a 6-year-old business, flower shop, and she's thinking maybe she'll expand it. But the first thing she said was, well, I have to be available to my customers 24/7, or, it won't be a success. And, I was thinking, who needs flowers at 3 a.m. personally? But, that is a felt sense of many people, which is, I don't have the opportunity or the right anymore if I want to do well in my life and, be available to my kids, to take any downtime, to create any silence. I have to be on call. Well, what that's doing is it's depleting our nervous system. And it's, people say that we are not focused anymore, but I make the point that we're actually hyper focused. We're always focused, narrowed down onto some task. And what that's doing is it's draining the prefrontal cortex, its ability, those attentional demands on us are draining literally out our sense of well-being from us, because they're not getting replenished with silence, with downtime, with more nourishing activities. So we're going from, as you know, activity to activity to activity to focus, 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 focus. And that is causing us to be what I call twired, which is a combination of tired and wired. We're exhausted, but we're also, amped up and on, like on amphetamines.
Yeah. Well, I read recently, like a lot of people are waking up in the middle of the night to check their phones.
50% of adults now, when they wake up in the middle of the night, check their email or something. Yeah. I mean, the average person is checking their smartphone every 5 minutes, right? And my sense is that's underreported. We're catching our phones about 3,000 times a day now. And, what's happening just, at a neuroscience level is that dopamine gets flooded, the feel-good hormone gets flooded into our system when we first use. But then what happens is if we get a notification and we can't, let's say, attend to it right away, or we can't get on, whatever is keeping us from, floods our system with cortisol. That's the backside of the dopamine. And cortisol is the fight or flight hormone. So right now we're in this constant loop of pleasure hormone, terror hormone, pleasure hormone, terror. And what happens when we get the cortisol hit is that the only way we know how to soothe that right now is to use again, to get back on. Then we calm down. So it's become the cause of our anxiety and also the solution for our anxiety, just like a drink, just like a drug, no difference. I mean, one thing I will say is that one thing that makes this addiction fundamentally different is that in other addictions, sooner or later, that addiction took away your life, right? You lost your job, you lost your relationship, whatever it is. With this addiction, it makes you an insider. It makes you cool, right?
Yeah.
So that's working against us.
Like, why aren't you on Facebook?
Right. Exactly. You don't know the latest app, what have you. But what's starting, and I feel very optimistic about this, what's starting to happen is that the more we point younger people into awareness about what is your actual experience of, being at a party and everybody's on their device talking to people not at that party, or what's your experience when you're not invited to something, and yet the pictures of what's happening and what you're missing are everywhere for you to see what you're missing, or what is it like to compare yourself constantly against the Instagram bodies that are all photoshopped, and all this sort of thing. We're starting to see the cracks in the armor. So it's not working that well. I had a kid come to see me maybe a month ago who said, I want to ask a girl out and I don't know how to have a conversation that's not on text. And now I'm asking her to sit across the table and have a coffee, and I feel totally ill-equipped. So we're starting to see, how is this going for us?
Yeah, well, that's good. The awareness is coming in.
It's coming in. Again, we got out of the gate really fast with technology, and the one that was running was the less evolved part of ourselves. And now the fact that my book is, doing so well, I'm delighted from one angle, but I'm also delighted because what it says is that people are desperately wanting a conversation about, this isn't working so well for me, right? And this is destroying my family, or this is making me feel like I never get what I need to get done. I just can't, because it just keeps coming, the data.
Yeah. So how can we, be more present and take care of ourselves in this world with all this technology?
Yeah, there's the question, right? So a couple things. One thing is to really get serious about this conversation, in the sense that a lot of what we're doing, you're seeing that our basic values, in a sense, as a culture have shifted from maybe service and character and discipline and hard work and all of that sort of good stuff to what? To popularity, to entertainment, to whatever's fastest and easiest. This is what we value now. And so starting to really get clear within yourself that that's all fun, and it doesn't lead to a fundamentally good life, a life that is nourishing at a deeper level. And it may keep you, sort of entertained playing Foursquare while you're waiting on that line. But how we are choosing right now to use our time and attention, which are our two greatest assets in life, our time and our attention, is not leading us, is not going to fundamentally create a good life. So we have to get very clear about that to start. And then second step is, and people come to me all the time. In the book, there's a detox, and there are very specific things that you can do. But before we talk about the specifics, is regaining a sense of spiritual autonomy, I would say, which is to say, how I live my life matters. I can follow another self-help list, I can do all that, but we do have to decide at some moment that I have to decide what's important to me in my life. If a relationship with my children, or with my spouse, or with my friends, being a full attention to them, and myself being the full attention of them when we meet. If these are the things that are important, if I want some sense of what really matters, doesn't have to be spiritual, but something that brings me real joy, in a sense of I'm accomplishing things, I'm learning. If some of these things are what you want in your life, then we have to really make a decision that we're going to take ownership of our relationship with technology. Because technology, if it's allowed to just sort of be something we're not aware of and we just do it because it's fun, it will steal our life. Like any addiction, it will steal our life. So the second step is this sense of noticing that by using without awareness, I'm creating a kind of spiritual crisis in myself, a sense of emptiness, a sense of not enough, a sense of, always getting to what's next, but never being where I am. Secondly, so okay, if that's so, then I need to take ownership of how I'm living, which means moment to moment, how am I using my time and attention? And then we start to look at some, specific behaviors, which we can do, very small things like when I'm with people I care about, or even not people I care about, turn my phone off. Yeah. Really simple, right? And there are all sorts of studies. Crazy idea. Obviously not at meals, just clearly not at meals, but all sorts of studies to show us that the way people report an interaction with another human being, how different it is if there's a phone on the table and if it's not on the table. Radically different walk away from what, the first half hour of my day, instead of starting my day as 90% of millennials do, with my phone and then responding all day to that phone, right? So the phone is going to dictate what my day is about because I just respond. Start the day, you get an old-fashioned alarm clock or use the phone just as an alarm, and then start the day with maybe a sense of even what kind of day do I want to have? What's important to me on this day? Half an hour before we get into the morass of the phone, we dive down the rabbit hole. Last hour of the day, take an hour at the end of the day to contemplate your life, to look at what was important today. These basic things, what went well? What am I grateful for? What would I like to maybe do differently? Drop back down into some of those more simple, basic human experiences. Turn off your notifications. 95% of notifications we get are, like a sale at the Gap. You don't need to know that. Right. And there are actually ways now of making it so that if it is a real emergency, there's a way of, your phone does something. So those little kind of things, every day, add a little silence to your day, add a little bit of downtime where you get to wander like a happy dog and you're not focused on something, where you're just letting that old-fashioned process of daydreaming, or give yourself 10 minutes of that per day, and silence, right? There are 30 very easy ones in the book, but again, this is not about infantilizing, the person listening to this. Yourself, if the minute you get in the subway, you're checking, do an experiment and just say, the next time I feel that, instead of impulsively and habitually using, what if I asked myself, what would I have to feel if I didn't use right now? So what we're doing when we do that, Helen, is we're just actually we're flipping technology. Rather than using it as a way to medicate, anesthetize, check out, whatever you want to call it, we use the impulse, the habit to use as a moment to wake up and say, wow, what is here? Am I bored? Am I lonely? Am I agitated? Am I checking because I really need to check? Is it for work? Am I checking because I don't know what else to do? So we interrupt that kind of addictive moment and turn it into a moment of waking up.
Yeah. I think there's people listening are going to be really interested in all these strategies and techniques. And as you know, most of the people on here watching are parents or teachers. So,
right. Well, with regard, if I can just jump in for a second, with regard to kids, there's some strategies too that I often suggest, because so much of my work right now, are desperate parents of trying to, wrestle back their families. Like right now, we bump into each other at the charging station. That's where we see each other, and so some of the things that I suggest to parents, first and foremost, is the modeling, right? If we're not modeling, we know this, and everything I'm about to say, but we can't talk the talk if we don't walk the walk. So first thing I ask parents is to tell me about their usage. And that's the very first thing. The second thing is I really encourage parents to get the conversation going. So, and by that I mean, what is it really like for you to be in this world where, you never have a break from your social life? You never, you're constantly comparing yourselves, where you can't miss a moment of a group chat or you feel like you'll be ostracized. What is it like when you're at that party and everybody's filming it, and then it's going to be on the internet? And so to really open up this conversation so that they are in touch with their experience. The scary place to me is when this state of nervous wreckness, or suicidality, which is, tripled for tweens in the last decade, and the number of hospitalizations for suicidal ideation, it's off the charts. When that becomes the norm and we're not inviting our kids anymore to say, wow, this is really hard, to be on a play date with somebody and she's looking at her phone and I'm looking at my phone, and everybody's too embarrassed to say, could we talk to each other? And then also to keep the conversation going about what all this means. Like, I'm not just yelling at you to get off your phone, but it's because I want to know you. Make it, kids are smart. Bring that in of why we're fighting so much about this and why it is so critical. And then if I can just say a few more things that I suggest to parents, it's really important to stress very, very, very intensely the importance of hard work and putting in time and effort into something. Hard work and time put in are what create confidence, real confidence. What's happening with kids now is, they can Google anything, they can get any answer. They value whatever is fastest and easiest. And what's happening is that's not leading to kids with real self-esteem. It's leading to a kind of, that whole imposter sort of, they may have figured out how to do something, but they don't really know it. They've gotten to the top of the mountain by helicopter, not walking the path. And so really, the more that you can stress the importance of putting in time and hard work and what that creates, because it's so easy for them to go the easy route. And also, if you can not be available to your kid every moment for texts, what should I get, chocolate or vanilla? Give your kid, an opportunity to grow up a little bit. Right? So many people, moms particularly, come to me and their kids are texting them 20, 30 times a day. It's not helping that kid. What's happening is we're infantilizing those. We're creating infants who can't make a decision on their own. The individuation process, which means I can't reach you, I have to work this out myself. Another thing, and I'm talking way too much, but I want to give parents some skills. Another thing is get your kids into activities like sports, or get them out in nature where it is tech free, because kids are forgetting that there are things in life that don't include technology. They're forgetting that. They think everything. And the more that they can feel confident about themselves without their technology, then the stronger kids we're creating. So doing that, really making sure that they have times in their day where they're getting good at things, where the technology is not even in the picture. Really, really important. It's also really important, again, we live in this sort of society where, kids are overscheduled. We're talking about hyper-focused. They go from thing to thing to thing to thing, even at the birthday parties. The woman with the guitar comes in here, and then we have the gymnastics portion, and then we have, let your trust downtime, trust unscheduled time, because what we're doing is we're robbing our kids of their imagination. We're robbing our kids. And what's happening is then when they're faced with open time, they are so anxious. They don't know how to fill it. It's like we've programmed them to just respond to activities.
With really young kids, like toddlers and preschoolers, the you know, iPads and phones, they're like a babysitter, right? And then that time for play and imagination is
That's right. That's right. Even in the malls now, you know, that you can rent those little strollers, and the little strollers for the 1-year-old who's like, you know, just doesn't even, you know, doesn't even know what's happening.
yeah.
They have a screen. They
Yeah.
have a screen. So all that neurological yummy stuff that would happen from the looking around and all of that has been removed so that we can look at, you know, Littlest Pet Shop ads on the screen. And it's not to say, you know, I'm a parent myself, and I totally get the need in certain moments to say, take the iPad and go away from me, right? Just please stop asking me for something. And we have to forgive ourselves for using it as the powerful babysitter that it is. And, because it's not a but, and I'm really asking parents, though, to dive deep into the larger implications of what that does when it's a consistent practice. We're also saying that I'm not really interested in you. It's a new form of kind of checking out on our kids. And what it's doing to that kid in terms of his or her capacity to then self-engage is detrimental. You know, that kid, when then goes in her room and doesn't have anything to swipe, doesn't know how to sort of self-play anymore. So I'm interested really, and of course the old-fashioned thing in terms of how to deal with technology, you know, and of course at meals. I also suggest to parents that they take a half day, and if you can make it happen, a full day a week where it's family time and tech is off. And also to be, and I really, if you can, you know, Sunday afternoons, we do that. And if you can also, you must be very specific with children about here, and I have my kids, and I recommend this, sign an actual contract that here's where the time is where you're going to get to use your tech. You know, maybe the first hour when you get home, you need to, you know, sort of do the debriefing. Okay. Then, you know, 4 to 8 is homework, and I have your phone. It's off. That's it. And then maybe you get another hour and a half, 2 hours in the evening because I have a teenager, but that it's not left to chance, right? Because in the battle and the screaming, a lot of things slip by the wayside, but we're talking about a major, major, major addictive substance that grown-ups can't handle, so much less the undeveloped brain. And we're asking that kid to be able to manage that addiction. Not going to happen. So, yeah, yeah. So address this substance entering your life, this entity, with the seriousness that it requires. And in the last resort, bribery, you know, if you stay off this long, you get, I don't know, you know, a chocolate. But I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, a Lego set, but something. It's important. It's really important. I want to create confident kids. And what's happening with technology is we're actually stripping them of confidence, and we're creating a whole new generation that feels not enough. This is the generation of not enough.
Yeah, that's so sad, isn't it? It's
heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And the level of anxiety that we are asking them to get okay with, you know, where you're never allowed to just be a kid anymore. You're never allowed to not be attending to the social circle, the academic circle, all the things, you know. And then we look online and we think, well, everything is possible. Why am I not doing everything? And then we become paralyzed, right? We keep saying we need to go more global, but human beings are built local.
connection has to be in person, doesn't it? I mean, like, look at someone in the eyes and really, really connect with them. So
Yeah.
we're doing that.
If you can do that with your kids, and I certainly suggest that to, grown-ups, that, if you can start to flip the habits we're getting in, so that if there's an opportunity to meet someone and take a walk as opposed to connect over Facebook, it's not about not connecting over Facebook, but it's about recognizing that there's a loss in the intimacy of that relationship if we're not getting together face to face.
Yeah, definitely. So we're almost coming to an end, but I wanted to ask you, because you've talked a lot about how addictive this is. So how is this addiction different than other types of addiction?
So, as I said before, one of the fundamental differences, and it's that difference that we've all drunk the Kool-Aid. That this is a condoned addiction. I will say one thing that we also want to be aware of. These often kids, teenagers, 20-somethings will say, well, you just don't get it. So and so about Instagram or Snapchat. It's just, and one of the things that I'm very aware of is that some of the behemoths, some of the big ones like the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Snapchats and so on, they've brought on all sorts of neuroscientists and addiction specialists, right? And one would think, oh, that's really good news. But in fact, they're using these folks to figure out how to make us more addicted. So yeah, it's pretty scary stuff. So what we're seeing is that these kids think they've got it all wrapped up, but actually, they're wonderful pigeons in that Skinner box. They've been figured out how much, there's a reward frustration cycle in the brain, and they've figured out just how much pleasure to deliver, how long to wait until that notification number comes up, how to create things like streaks, where if you don't have a streak every day, you lose that friend. They're not one of your friends or whatever on Snapchat. These are all very well thought out because, addiction is good for business. So remember, when you're getting hooked and hooked, that's what's wanted, right? So this is a very different addiction, in part because not just that we're all in, but that we have a lot of smart people that are trying to figure out how to encourage that. And we have to take some sort of ownership in terms of chemicals and so on, it's not different. But in terms of our relationship with this addiction, that's why all the people buying my book, The Power of Off, and talking to me and talking to many people, I mean, there are lots of people talking about this, but is showing us that we're waking up like you have to do in an addiction and saying, it's not working for me that well. It's just a little more subtle. I'm not in a gutter. I'm not getting a DUI. I'm not on the street buying crack. But my life is becoming unmanageable in different ways.
Yeah, and as you said, the anxiety levels are.
Yes, and I'm not fundamentally happy living this way, right? I don't want to spend 90% of my day figuring out the technology and answering useless emails and buried in data.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nancy. This was really very interesting, and I'm sure it's going to be really helpful for all of the viewers. And it's something I think, as you mentioned, awareness is coming in, and people are starting to realize that there has to be some boundaries there.
And it's up to us. That's the thing, Helen. It's up to us. Facebook is not going to set the boundary for us. We have to set the boundary for ourselves and take ownership of how do we want to live our lives.
So we'll have information about Nancy's book and her website if you wanted to contact her. All that will be listed on the below the video. So
lovely to speak with you.
Try to reduce our use of technology to create more meaningful lives. So thank you once again, Nancy. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.